AWOLNATION is a band that I created, um, which seems like an egotistical thing to say. So it's hard. It's uncomfortable for me to even talk about it in a lot of ways. But I am the architect, I suppose. Our bass player Dave said it best. He's like, "You're the architect of the project." I'm like, "Okay, that sounds pretty good." You know, I was in all these other bands before, and in a nutshell, none of them reached the success or attention or enough listeners that anyone in the band ever, wanted really. So when the last band broke up, it was my second time, being in a signed band, with a major label and all that. And I learned so much from all these mistakes I made as both, a leader of a band and a songwriter and in the business sense as well. And they had failed, and I hit like kind of a wall where the last band, Under the Influence of Giants, we broke up, and I didn't know what in the world I was going to do, So I had nothing else to do but to start to make my own songs, because the band had broken up, and I'd always had this vision of making what ended up being Megalithic Symphony, but I didn't know that. I just had a vision of combining all the stuff I love, from hip-hop music to hardcore music to obvious pop music and great classic stuff, like the Beatles and, the normal stuff as well. And I finally had the opportunity to do it because I had nowhere else to go but up, because I was at rock bottom. And that's sort of how AWOLNATION was created. The punk hardcore scene in the 90s in California was a huge influence for me, especially the bands from there. And I think also being competitive, because there's so many different bands from our area, and there's been some huge success stories from where we live. Not necessarily that they're bands that I would totally listen to or anything like that, but some are good friends, and some I would listen to more than others. But Linkin Park is from 10 minutes away from where I grew up, and I've never bought a Linkin Park record, but I mean, they're massive. So I would see that and go, whoa, they did it. Maybe I can do it, But none of those bands influenced our sound at all, ever. It was just cool to see. The way I write songs is normally it'll be an idea that just comes to me sort of out of thin air, and I do my best to record that idea and sing it into my voice memo on my phone as soon as possible. And then when I have the time to do it, I try to turn that idea into a reality of a song. And it's really simple, and that's how it goes. I never sit down and go, I'm going to write this kind of song or that kind of song. It's an idea that comes to me, and I feel grateful that for whatever reason this idea came into my mind and not some other songwriter. And that's it. Both. I mean, it's my vision, and it's my songs I created, but I couldn't have created these songs if it weren't for the guys in my band. I couldn't have written these songs. Like, for example, our keyboard player Kenny, he engineered "Sail," which is a song that kicked the door open for us, if you will. And if he wasn't there in the studio at the time, I wouldn't have known how to get the mic to sound right and all that stuff. I wrote the whole song and sang everything and did all that, but couldn't have done it without him being there. So that's a good example of your friends helping you out. And then our bass player Dave was in my last band, so he understands like the history and how much this means to both he and I, having gone through so many ups and downs together. Drew, our guitar player, now we've been writing together since we were 15 or 16 years old. So a lot of what I do couldn't have happened if it weren't if I hadn't written so many songs with him and learned so much from him and been inspired by him as a guitar player. So even though he didn't play a bunch of guitar on the record, the guitar tones I got were hugely influenced by him. And I couldn't have written this record if it weren't for all the other bands I was in before. So I consider it, I would like to think that anyone that has been in a band with me before understands that I really appreciate the time we had writing together, and I learned so much from these people. It just so happens that I did it on my own this time. We actually played a show in Austin. Never played there before. It was probably our fifth show we'd ever played. And everybody knew every word. I don't know how they even knew these songs because they weren't out yet, And they knew every word. And when we played Sail, it was sort of my first Beatles moment, where people were screaming the words louder than the PA system. And I remember, it's almost hard to talk about without getting choked up, but I remember feeling choked up and almost crying on stage because, like, whoa, I'd never felt anything like that, had little glimpses of good shows where people were dancing in the past and other bands, but nothing like this, you know. And it hit me right then that, whoa, we may be onto something, you know. Maybe I wasn't crazy, you know. So that was probably the start of it, and then from then on out, so it's been crazy. I'm just concentrating on making sure the next record is hopefully better than the first one, you know, because you don't want to make the same record or make something that disappoints people, or make the crazy art record that no one understands or whatever, you know. I want to make a record that is even more massive, and huger sounding and even stranger sounding all in one, you know, and that's my main goal. At the same time, we're trying to get as many people to hear this record as possible, and it's just starting over here, and it's just starting in the rest of Europe as well. In fact, the record doesn't come out till June 4th in the rest of Europe, so that's sort of the goal, is to just keep going, you know.